With the release of Shattered Veil in Black Ops 6 Zombies, I thought this would be a great time to go through and rank every single DLC 3 map from the worst to the best in COD Zombies history. We have 13 maps to rank here, including the non-Treyarch Zombies experiences, so let's just get right into it. In last place, in the number 13 spot, is going to be Bodega Cervantes from Call of Duty World War II. So I know many of you probably have absolutely no idea what I'm talking about here, but Bodega Cervantes is one of the 3 Tortured Path maps from COD World War II. Most people tend to rank the Tortured Path as a singular map, which I've never understood because it's not a map, it's a game mode with 3 maps within it. I mean, to get to the other maps, you literally have to go back to the menu and load in the new map. It's not like Outbreak, where all the different regions are connected in the same exact match. This is literally entirely different maps. Now, the Easter eggs are obviously heavily connected to each other, but you can play the map in 2 different ways. You can play it in the Tortured Path mode, which is more of an objective-based mode. It's also the mode that you have to play in order to do the Easter eggs, and it's limited to round 10. You only go up to that point, but you do a couple different objectives leading to that point. And then there's also the regular round-based survival versions of these maps, which is literally just the same map, but regular traditional round-based survival, where you go in and play till as long as you possibly can. There's a pack-a-punch machine, there's a mystery box, and that's pretty much it. Now, a lot of the positives and negatives that I point out for this map can also be said about the other Tortured Path maps, but some of them are exclusive to Bodega Cervantes as well, which, by the way, it's not called Bodega Cervantes if you're playing the Tortured Path variant. The Tortured Path variant is called Into the Storm. But I much prefer the names for the survival versions of these maps as opposed to the Tortured Path versions. The Tortured Path as a whole was extremely experimental, and I think the main reason a lot of people disliked it, including myself, was because it was taking up a DLC 3 spot rather than being a separate bonus thing. Kind of the same reason people disliked Outbreak from Cold War. People's main criticism for that mode was because of the fact that it was taking place of a brand new traditional round-based survival experience, and this is the same thing that happened with the Tortured Path. I genuinely think people would not hate this experience if it was just a bonus thing on top of having 4 DLC maps in the game. But unfortunately, that just wasn't the case. People were expecting a brand new, fully fledged experience, and instead they got this very experimental, objective-based mode with some survival maps on the side. And I used to have very negative opinions towards the Tortured Path mode, but over the past year, I've actually started to enjoy a lot of aspects of this mode. I used to hate the fact that it was a limited mode where obviously you only play up till round 10 and then you have to exit, but you have the survival maps as playable experiences as well. So at the end of the day, if you want to have that unlimited time experience, you just go play the survival map. I used to hate being forced to do objectives, but to be honest, after seeing what Vanguard did with Duran Fong and Terra Maldicta and forcing you to do an objective every single round, only having 3 objectives, sort of 4 if you count the boss fight, within 10 rounds is not nearly as bad. And the objectives are actually kind of challenging. I don't think they're like the hardest things ever, especially if you're set up properly, but there are some that can be quite difficult and could lead to you failing very often, whereas that really never happens with Duran Fong, Terra Maldicta, or Outbreak. The only thing that sucks about the difficulty of the challenges in this mode is the fact that it really depends on the objective you get. There are some that are incredibly easy and some that are incredibly hard, so the RNG about whether or not you're going to have a difficult experience playing the Tortured Path kind of solely depends on which objective you get, especially if you're doing the Easter egg. Certain objectives will completely make or break that experience, and I think the RNG behind that's just a little bit too significant. I think they should have balanced it out a little bit better. But at the end of the day, I do appreciate that the objectives are still quite challenging. I also love the Waffen boxes. These are basically a mix of the mystery box and wall buys, where there's a Waffen box for each of the weapon classes in the game, and it gives you a random weapon from that weapon class when you purchase it, which is a really interesting concept that we've really never seen before in Zombies. And when you beat the Easter egg for the entirety of the Tortured Path, you get access to one of the coolest melee weapons of all time, the Sword of Barbarossa, which is usable on all 3 of the Tortured Path experiences, and I do have to say, it is probably one of the most fun weapons ever. You can literally launch the zombies across the map with this sword. It is so sick. And you might be wondering, why is Bodega Cervantes so low on this ranking if you seem to be saying a lot of positive things about the Tortured Path? Well, the reason for that is that most of the positive things I've been saying applies to all 3 of the Tortured Path maps, and I think those maps just do it a lot better. There's a couple specific things about Bodega Cervantes that really do suck. First of all, the Easter egg. I don't hate the entire Easter egg of the tortured path, but the segment that is on the Bodega Cervantes map is definitely the worst part of it, specifically the windmill step. Now, don't get me wrong, this step isn't absolute garbage, but I do think just having to sit there and wait for the windmill to spin in the correct position and then to perfectly time the interaction with the windmill to stop it in the exact right place is just not a very fun step. It's not that challenging, to be honest, it's just kind of tedious to do. And the step before this required you to go around the map and collect a bunch of zombie parts, which I don't think is that difficult once you learn all the part locations, but I do think it's one of those steps where do I really want to look around for zombie parts for 20 minutes? Not really. The last part of this Easter egg involves an escort of the zombie, and this step isn't terrible once you learn how to do it properly, but before that it can be very challenging and is really dependent on what objective you get at round 6. But I do like the fact that when you do learn certain strategies of how to execute this, it can become a lot easier. And then it ends in a boss fight against the Brenner, which this happens regardless of if you do the Easter egg or not. And the Brenner obviously is a reused boss enemy from the Final Reich, so it's not really that new or original, but it still is a fun little boss. It's not like a great one or anything, but it's decent. The location of this map isn't the most interesting location ever, but I actually don't hate it as much as I used to. I started to kind of enjoy the atmosphere of it because it's very different for zombies, and I kind of think it works. Ultimately, I don't think this is a bad map by any means, but I think the good experiences you can get from this map exist on other maps that are much better anyways. Before we get into the rest of the ranking, I'd like to show off these really cool Call of Duty Zombies themed Control Freak thumbsticks that will help your accuracy in Call of Duty, but are also just incredibly comfortable and look amazing. And they even come with a Speed Cola and Deadshot Daiquiri perk can, which is so cool. The Speed Cola edition will also give you a digital code for an in-game cosmetic weapon charm in Black Ops 6 Zombies. Use code XpertFusion at the link in the description for 12% off on this and any other Control Freak products. Now let's get back to the ranking. In the number 12 spot is going to be Carrier from Advanced Warfare's Exo Zombies. This map is surprisingly one of my favorite maps in Exo Zombies, yet it's still incredibly low on this list because I think Exo Zombies as a whole is just not very good. But there are some huge positives. First of all, the LZ-52 Limbo is one of the coolest wonder weapons of all time. It's not like incredibly effective, especially on the higher rounds, but it is so unique. It shoots this horizontal laser that just goes right through the zombies, and you could just keep spamming it again and again and again. And we've never seen something like that before, so the idea of it was just so smart, and it is so much fun to use. The Plinko board is one of my favorite map unique features we've ever seen on a zombies map. It's this little board where you can throw grenades into it and it will kind of bounce down like a Plinker board does and go into a random slot. And different slots give you a different amount of points. So you can basically just use your grenades to get free points, which is pretty cool because sometimes I don't really care to use my grenades against the zombies all that often. So getting to have extra points just by random chance from this Plinko board is really awesome. This map also introduced the teleport grenade, which is easily one of the coolest pieces of equipment we've ever seen in zombies, where when you shoot it, you will teleport to the location of where you shot the teleport grenade. I also really love the map layout and the location itself. It's on this Atlas carrier ship, which obviously this game in general didn't have the most interesting or unique locations ever due to the fact that they're all some sort of Atlas facility, but this is definitely one of the coolest Atlas facilities we get to play in, especially because there's a lot of interesting looking areas. I mean, the moon pool room is probably one of the coolest looking rooms of any zombies map ever. And then there's the Easter egg, which this is very hard to decide whether or not I think this is a positive or negative for the map, because there's a lot of fun steps in this Easter egg. I love the drunk laser challenge where you are literally drunk, your character is like all kinds of loopy and dizzy, and you have to go through this laser obstacle course while drunk. It's a ridiculous step, but it's kind of fun. There's also this whole game with the Plinko board that you have to do where you have to shoot grenades into the Plinko board at the exact right times to match up with specific grenade icons that appear. But then there's some absolutely terrible steps. For example, the step where you have to wait for teleporter fragments to drop from the teleport zombies. This step is ridiculous. It takes so long and just artificially makes the Easter egg take so many more rounds than it should. There's also these objective rounds similar to some of the other Exozombies maps, but these ones aren't absolutely horrible. I just don't really like them. They have these Atlas soldiers that spawn in and you have to defuse a bomb, and they're not that hard to deal with, but it is kind of annoying if you fail it because then that entire room is filled with gas and it basically closes that section off. That can be kind of frustrating. But my main issue with this map is simply just the game that it's in. The mechanics of Exozombies absolutely sucks, and obviously the mechanics are very similar map to map. For example, the Pack-a-Punch mechanics, the fact that you have 20 different Pack-a-Punch tiers and it barely feels like it's upgrading your gun each time, that sucks. Most of the special enemies are really annoying to deal with, especially the EMZs, having these electric zombies that disable your exosuit pretty much on every round after a certain point. They are just so annoying to deal with. And you also have the infected zombies that return on those special rounds where you have to go to these specific pads to clear the infection from you. And I mean, it's not as bad on this map as it is on the other maps because at least there's 2 different pads on this map where you can clear the infection, whereas the other maps only have 1. So it's not nearly as bad, but still kind of sucks. At the end of the day, this map is okay. It's not like a terrible time or anything. I just think the fact that it's in Exozombies holds it back quite a bit. In number 11th spot is going to be Altar of Blood, which is the 3rd Tortured Path map. If you are playing the Tortured Path version of this map, it is called Beneath the Ice. And most of what I said for Bodega Cervantes can also be applied here, where I do appreciate some of what the Tortured Path attempted to do, but the fact that it was the DLC 3 experience rather than being bonus content is what holds it back significantly. The best thing about Altar of Blood is definitely the boss fight against the Guardian, not to be mistaken with the Guardian boss fight from Citadel d'Amour, but this boss fight was pretty good. It's a short one, it's not necessarily like one of the best boss fights ever, but it's actually quite exciting, and I love the arena for it that you're fighting in. I love the mechanics of it, the fact that the boss can re-heal, but if you bring the boss away from the middle area, then it has a harder time trying to heal. The Easter egg isn't too special, it is very, very short, but I do enjoy it at least a little bit. And of course, you can get access to the Sword of Barbarossa on this map as well, which you can also get access to in the survival map version of this experience. And it's pretty fun. Like, I really don't think this is a terrible map by any means. Again, it goes back to what I originally said, where if this was a bonus map, I think it would be a lot more enjoyable, but because it was DLC 3, most people were pretty underwhelmed by it, including myself. I absolutely love the location and the theme of this map, but the exact same theme is done better in the Frozen Dawn, which is the DLC 4 map, so I do think that loses the value of this map just a little bit. Both maps do take place in Antarctica, very close to each other, but I do think it is kind of cool how Altar of Blood almost works as a prologue to the Frozen Dawn. That is kind of cool. In the number 10 spot is the Archon from Vanguard Zombies. This is likely one of the most hated maps of all time, and I personally don't agree with any of those opinions. This map is not that bad. Is it great? Obviously not, hence why it's not any higher on this list, but it is nowhere close to being one of the worst maps ever. The biggest issue with this map is obviously the fact that it is pretty much all reused content except for the main quest and the boss fight itself, but everything else is reused from Terra Maledicta. You have the exact same location as what the hub world is from Terra Maledicta, the exact same wonder weapon with the Decimator shield. They also brought in the Wonder Waff from Shinonuma Reborn. There is pretty much nothing new here, not even any new special enemies. With that being said, I do think the map is still an enjoyable time. I am much more of an Easter egg player than anything else, and this is actually a decent Easter egg. I think it's one of the best main quests we've had in the past 5 years of zombies. I am not even kidding. It's definitely a better Easter egg than most Black Ops Cold War zombies Easter eggs. It involves having you do 3 trials that can be completed in any order, and some of the trials are really cool. There's one that involves this Simon Says game with these different symbols, and you guys know I love Simon Says challenges in zombies, so it's a pretty fun step. And then at the end of it, it gives you a challenge that you have to complete, and if you fail it, you have to restart that step. But the challenges usually are pretty fun. There's also another trial that involves you grabbing relics from around the map, and then you have to escort that relic to another area of the map, but it gives you a challenge while you're going there. For example, it can give you a challenge such as hip fire only, so you can only hip fire while you're going there, and obviously a bunch of zombies are coming at you, but you can't ADS during that, and it also makes you go very, very slow. You cannot sprint while you're doing it. So challenges like that just make Easter eggs a little bit more interesting, and it also makes it change every single time you do it because it's a different challenge every single time you do it. And it all leads to a boss fight against KontrolFreeks that is actually a decent boss fight. It's definitely not one of the best of all time, it's not better than most of the Black Ops 6 boss fights, but it still is a pretty decent boss fight with a really cool arena and some pretty interesting mechanics to it. And although they're reused wonder weapons, I do really enjoy using the Decimator shield as well as the Wonder Waff on this map. The marketing of this map was definitely the biggest issue with it because it led people to believe that this was going to be a completely brand new map and it was going to be a way to end out the entire story of Vanguard Zombies. But instead, when we loaded it up and we realized it was just the Terra Maldicta location, obviously people were going to be very disappointed, and that was going to overwhelm any other possible positive opinions they can have on the map. What Treyarch should have done is came out and said, we just don't have time to make a completely new experience here, so we're going to take Terra Maldicta and make a round-based version of it and have it be a new experience with a new Easter egg and a new boss fight. That would have at least made people go into it expecting what they're going to get, and maybe they could have seen the positives a little bit better, but it was just a case of really bad marketing that led people to being extremely disappointed. Overall, it also has a lot of similar problems as most of the modern Zombies maps do, where the mechanics in general just aren't my favorite. I don't like the armor system, the loadout system, and all these other features, but I do think Vanguard actually has some better mechanics than Black Ops Cold War even, because of the fact that the mystery box is much better because of the rarity system being tied to the Pack-a-Punch system. So you actually will hit the mystery box a lot when playing this map, and I think that makes it a little bit more exciting. I can totally agree with most of the negatives people have on this map. Obviously, being Terra Maldicta but with a green filter is not a good look whatsoever, and Vanguard as a whole only had 3 DLC maps, so this being one of them is pretty bad. But I still do think the experience itself with the Easter egg is decently fun. In the number 9 spot is going to be USS Mount Olympus, which of course is the second Tortured Path map, and it is definitely the best of all of the Tortured Path maps. The Tortured Path name for this map is Across the Depths, and I actually have quite a lot of positives to say for this map. First of all, the Easter egg is actually quite incredible. I would argue this is actually a really solid quest, and if all 3 of the Tortured Path maps had quests similar to this one, it would actually be up there as one of my favorite Easter eggs ever. Now, I didn't mention this with the other Tortured Path maps, but one of the worst things about the Tortured Path is the fact that you have to do each of the Easter eggs consecutively without fail in order to get the full rewards. But you still can do the Easter eggs on their own, just without getting the rewards whenever you want. So that is a bit unfortunate, but it doesn't really hold back how fun this Easter egg is for me personally. It's very short. All it really involves is escorting a fish around the map and then collecting souls into it, which can be quite challenging because this map is very close quarters. But the best part of this Easter egg comes with the underwater section, where you go into this really cool looking arena and you have to jump to these different islands that each show visions from the prior maps in the game. There's a Final Reich Island, there's a Darkest Shore Island, and then there's the Shadowed Thrones Island. And all of them have these little segments where you have to kill a couple different special enemies from those maps. And then the final island gives one of the coolest steps in Zombies history, where you have to play the fish in a bucket game. This is a mini game that has 3 different rounds where buckets will appear on the floor and a fish will go into one of the buckets. But then the bucket will turn over so you can't see which bucket has the fish, and the buckets will kind of swap with each other really fast and make it very hard for you to track which one has the fish in the bucket. And then you have to guess which one has the fish in the bucket. And obviously, if you were really fast and it kept your eye on the bucket at all times, then you would be able to guess correctly. And if you guess it incorrectly, it will spawn in a special enemy that will then try to kill you. And you can do this infinitely. Like, you can just keep going as long as you need to and just keep guessing. It'll just keep spawning in more special enemies and make it harder for you to survive. So eventually you probably will die by the special enemies if you aren't getting it correctly fast enough. But I think it's a fun challenge, and I like the fact that you can actually just focus on this without zombies hitting you in the meantime. It's pretty cool. But unfortunately, this map ends with a really weak boss fight against the Stadjäger from the Shadowed Throne. The Stadjäger is really cool from that map, but it comes over to this map and it's suddenly really weak and you can kill it within less than a minute. So it kind of sucks, but overall, the map itself is pretty good before that. But one of the main positives for this map is with the survival version of it, because this is the only map in COD World War II Zombies that has no Wustlings. Now, I don't hate the Wustlings. I think they can be fun special enemies to fight against, but having them on every map is a bit much. So it was nice to have at least one map in the game that just doesn't have them. And just like the other Tortured Path maps, you can get the Sword of Barbarossa on it, and it is really fun to use on this map, especially because of how close quarters it is. It ends up being way more useful. I also love the added mechanic of the boat shifting back and forth a little bit, even to the point where the trucks on the boat will shift as well. It's really cool. It opens up different paths, and it makes for an interesting experience. In number 8 spot is going to be Shangri-La from Black Ops 1. This is a map that a lot of people used to hate back in the day because it was much harder than a lot of other maps, and a lot of people used to judge maps based on how easy or hard they were because people just didn't want to deal with a really frustrating map. And Shangri-La is still to this day one of the hardest maps. It is very close quarters, it is hard to get set up properly, and then the high rounds can be quite challenging as well. But I love the fact that this map is so challenging. I think most of the older maps from World at War and Black Ops 1 that were a lot more bare bones and simple, like Shangri-La, just work much better when they are challenging. Because if there isn't much to do on the map, I want to at least be spending my time trying to survive. And if it's a really easy map, then you're not going to be having many of those moments where you are really trying to survive. But this map feels that way. You are very vulnerable even in the early rounds. And this map finds a way to challenge players in one of the best ways it possibly could, with having a lot of environmental challenges with the booby traps. There's a lot of different places on this map that will actually damage you, including these spikes that come out of the ground near the spawn room, as well as the mud trap that kind of gets you stuck in really slow mud unless you stand on the panels that kind of like shift you into a specific direction. All of this makes for a really interesting map that is quite difficult to traverse. And obviously the map is very close quarters, so that makes it much more difficult as well. But the map does give you access to one of the coolest wonder weapons ever, that of course being the baby gun, also known as the 3179 JGB215, which is definitely one of the most unique things they've ever done in zombies, where you shoot the zombie and it literally turns them into a tiny version of a zombie that you can then run up to and kick, which is absolutely hilarious. I also love a lot of the fast travel methods on this map, such as the water slide and the minecart. They aren't huge parts of the map, I don't use them that often, but whenever you do use them, they are pretty cool. This map also has a ton of really interesting special enemies, such as the monkeys, the napalm zombies, and the shriekers. The shriekers and the napalms spawn in periodically and are pretty fun and challenging to fight against. I definitely enjoy how they work, the shrieker being one that runs really fast at you, and then the napalm being one that walks really slowly towards you, but is much more deadly with its giant explosion if you kill it nearby you. But the monkeys on this map offer one of the most interesting gameplay mechanics we've ever seen in zombies to this day, and this is the fact that whenever a power-up drops on the map, the monkeys will run up to the power-up and take the power-up away from you and bring it back to the spawn. And if they successfully do this, you lose the power-up. So it's this really cool system where you have to grab the power-up as soon as humanly possible. But the best part about it is that when the monkey grabs the power-up, it will be changing the power-up as it's moving. So if you shoot the monkey to then get the power-up back, it will change to whatever power-up it was on when you shot the zombie. And this is actually the way where you can get extra perks on this map. So if you want to get all perks on this map, you can do that just by shooting the monkey at the exact perfect time when the perk bottle pops up through the cycle. But it's also just great to change the power-up to other power-ups as well. If you really need a max ammo, it's great for that. Or if you really want double points or an insta-kill, whatever it may be, it is such a cool mechanic, and I can't believe we've never seen something like this return. I also love the spike mores on this map. It's basically like a different version of the claymores. I really miss having stuff like this in zombies. I feel like we don't have nearly enough map unique equipment anymore, but this was a great example of that back on Shangri-La. My only main criticism with this map is the main Easter egg quest itself. It is one of the weaker ones in my opinion. I know a lot of people do enjoy it, but I personally am not a fan of it. I think it's great for the story. I like the fact that you have to free these two explorers, Brock and Gary, from this time loop as they were trying to prove the existence of Agartha. It's just full of a bunch of steps that don't really interest me, and of course you have to have 4 players in order to do it unless they're using mods on PC. And only one player actually gets access to the Perkaholic reward at the end, unless you redo the Easter egg 3 more times to then get everyone else the Perkaholic. I don't understand why they did that. It should have just been one completion and then everyone gets the Perkaholic, but for some reason they decided to design it in that really weird way. I also don't really care for the Zombies Chronicles version of Shangri-La in Black Ops 3 simply because it doesn't have PhD Flopper, which in my opinion this map is best when you use the Mustang and Sally. So if you're not gonna let me use PhD Flopper, I don't really care to play it. Overall, Shangri-La is a pretty decent map, but it does leave much to be desired. In number 7 spot is going to be Attack of the Radioactive Thing from Infinite Warfare. It honestly hurts to put this map kind of low on this ranking because I love Infinite Warfare and I really do appreciate what this map was. But I do think there are much better DLC 3 maps that we're going to talk about in a little bit. But I absolutely love the theme of this map. The fact that it went with the 1950s monster movie aesthetic. At the beach, you have the giant Krogzilla in the background that's always a looming threat and then ends up being the boss fight in the end. There's 50s era music playing throughout the map that you can listen to. And all the different areas of this map just fit a 1950s California so well. The Mad Wonder Weapon, also known as the Modular Atomic Disintegrator, is actually really cool. I know a lot of people don't like it, but I like the fact that it comes out of the Magic Wheel because most Wonder Weapons in this game don't come out of the Magic Wheel. Instead, you have to get them via quest. So it was kind of cool to change things up with this map and have it be out of the Magic Wheel. And then you have to find parts around the map that upgrade it and make it even more powerful. The weapon itself shoots extremely powerful atomic blasts, and if you do a charge shot, it will completely wipe out a horde, and you can even refill the ammo on it at the different green goo balls around the map, which is pretty cool. There's some really cool, unique buildable traps that you can get on this map. I love the fact that Infinite Warfare did that, where you don't have the exact same buildable traps on every single map. Instead, they changed it up map to map, and this map had some pretty cool ones. You had the Seismic Wave Generator, the Violent Ray device, the Hypnosis device, as well as the Mind Control device, all of which are very fun to use. The special enemies include the Krogs as well as the Krog Brutes, and they are probably some of the coolest looking special enemies we've ever seen in Zombies history. I absolutely love the look of them. The main Easter egg quest itself is actually one I enjoy quite a bit. It's probably one of the most complicated Easter eggs we've ever seen. There is literally a whole step that requires you to do chemistry, which a lot of people don't like that. They hear that you need to do chemistry, they immediately think of school, and they are disgusted and don't want to go anywhere near this map. But I personally like it. I like the fact that you have to learn a lot to be good at this map and to master the Easter egg. It just makes it more replayable because there's actually a reason for me to go back and keep trying it again and again so I can get better and better at it. My only issue is that there really isn't enough action steps in this Easter egg. I think the best Easter egg is find a good balance of puzzles and action, whereas this Easter egg is pretty much all chemistry, some puzzles, as well as fetch quest type steps where you have to go around the map and collect things. And I think they could have found a place to put at least a couple of action steps in there, and I think the Easter egg overall would have been a bit better. The Krogzilla boss fight is actually one of the most unique ones we've ever seen before. There's even a section of it where you have to do this laser parkour challenge, and then you have to input a code into a bomb. It's quite intense and actually pretty cool. And although I talked about how much I love the aesthetic of this map, I do absolutely hate how the map itself looks. They decided to go with this really dulled, washed out look for the map where the colors are just really gross, and it just doesn't work whatsoever. Most of the areas of this map look pretty bad, unless you have some really intense filters put on through the PC version, but obviously if you're playing on console, you can't really do that, so you're just kind of stuck with how the map looks. And I really love the aesthetic, but it's kind of ruined by these really dull and washed out colors. And I think it only affects certain areas of the map, because some areas like the beachside market and like right outside that area, it doesn't look that bad at all actually, but when you go to the beach and you go to the camp area, it looks horrible. It's probably one of the worst looking maps we've seen ever, and it really is unfortunate because again, the aesthetic is amazing, but if they just made the colors pop a little bit more, it would have made the aesthetic work even better. And I don't necessarily think this map is lacking in content, but I do think compared to the prior Infinite Warfare Zombies maps, it does feel like it doesn't have nearly as much. I mean, even just looking at the Wonder Weapon, this map only has the Mad Wonder Weapon, whereas Spaceland had the 4 space pistols as well as the Forge Freeze. Then Raven the Redwoods had the 4 crossbows as well as the Smiley, and then Shell and Shuffle had the 4 chi abilities plus the katana and the nunchucks. And then you go to this map and it's just the Mad. Now, of course, many Zombies maps have only had one Wonder Weapon, but just comparing it to what the other Infinite Warfare Zombies maps set up, I feel like it was a massive step backwards. And lastly, the Ghosts and Skulls quest on this map, which is called Skull Hop in this map, is easily one of the worst versions of Ghosts and Skulls in Infinite Warfare. For those of you who don't know what Ghosts and Skulls is, it's basically a whole secondary quest on each of the Infinite Warfare maps that all leads to this final encounter where you're basically inside of an arcade machine playing this really cool game. And the quest involves you getting 6 skulls around the map by doing various things, but unfortunately Attack of the Radioactive Thing has some of the worst steps in order to get all of the skulls. One of the steps involves having to kill exactly 16 zombies with a trap. No more, no less, and you have to do it all in one go. And this probably wouldn't be that horrible if you were doing it on a really early round, but it is so frustrating to try and count 16 zombies out of a crowd, because the way the zombies work in this game, obviously they're going to be shifting into each other, moving all around. You're not going to keep track of each of the zombies that you're counting. Ghosts and Skulls is usually a really fun quest on most of these maps, but unfortunately I just think it's by far the worst on Attack of the Radioactive Thing, and even the final encounter itself is probably the worst out of all of them. It's just not as fun to play as the other ones are. And they're usually worth doing because you get a Perk-a-Holic for doing it, so obviously it's going to be worth doing. In number 6 spot is going to be Deriz from World at War, a very iconic classic map that deserves all the credit it gets for being one of the most innovative maps of all time, especially with the fact that it was the first map to add the Pack-a-Punch machine, which really changed the game quite a bit, because before we were all just using regular weapons along with the ray gun and then of course the Wunderwaffe on Shinonuma, but being able to upgrade every single weapon to a Pack-a-Punched form where it basically shoots out lasers was game-changing. Deriz also added the Bowie knife and the monkey bombs for the first time, and of course both of these items became a very iconic part of zombies. By far the best part of this map has to be the story. This is when the story started to really become a major part of zombies. The developers realized they had something going, and so they really started building upon what we had with radios. Of course, there was a lot of radios on this map that gave you more context to the characters and the locations that you were at, especially the ones that involved Ludwig Maxis, Samantha, and Richtofen. Obviously, it includes one of the most iconic radios of all time, where Richtofen locks Maxis and Samantha in the teleporter, and Richtofen has his iconic quote of "Goodbye, Dr. Maxis." It's such a great moment for the story.
Edward, what are you doing? Open the door! Edward, open this door now!
I'm scared.
Doctor! Stay by me, Samantha! Goodbye, Dr. Maxis.
Just from a pure writing standpoint, this is probably the best the story ever was. Of course, nowadays we have these crazy cutscenes and boss fights, and there's way more scale and spectacle to the story, but you can't beat how incredible the storytelling was in some of these earlier maps. I only have a few issues with this map. First of all, of course, it is very bare bones, but it was also one of the first zombies maps ever, so you have to give it some leeway there. And the World at War version of this map is incredibly glitchy and buggy. There are some really bad problems, especially with the Wunderwaffe, which is a great wonder weapon, but if you shoot yourself with the Wunderwaffe on this map with Jug, it will actually remove Juggernog, which is insane. That is obviously kind of game breaking, and it's quite unfortunate, but it also kind of makes the map a little bit more challenging, so I guess there's a good and a bad to it. But of course, you can always just play the Black Ops 1 version of Deriz, which doesn't have this glitch, but then it also doesn't have the PPSH. So you're winning something and then you're also losing something. Overall, it is important to keep in mind that Deriz only is such a great map because of the time it came out, and it came out back when there wasn't many zombies maps, so at the time it was so huge and so innovative. But obviously, if this map came out today, it wouldn't be seen as nearly as good as it was back then. In number 5 spot is going to be Mauer der Toten. For a while, this was the best map in the Dark Ether story, but of course, after Black Ops 6, there is now quite a few maps that I consider better than Mauer, but this map is still pretty solid. It takes place in Berlin, Germany, and it is quite a gorgeous map, even though it's just taking a location from campaign and utilizing it for a zombies map, which I usually don't like, but they still managed to make the map feel like a zombies map, so that was definitely good, even though I still kind of wish they did go more of an original map route, especially because Cold War just didn't have a lot of original maps to begin with. But given the fact that Cold War's development time was very short, I totally get it, and honestly they went with a very good location to use for a map. The Cerberus wonder weapon is one of the best wonder weapons of all time, and it's quite a unique concept where every now and then zombies will drop different variants of the wonder weapon that you can trade out for the one that you're currently holding, and once you utilize all the ammo in those other variants, it will then go back to the default version of the Cerberus. Would I have preferred the map just to have 4 different variants of the wonder weapon to begin with, and then you have to craft each of them separately? Probably, but I do appreciate this being quite a unique concept in how it works. I just hate the fact that the default version of the Cerberus is by far the best ones. I don't know why they didn't make the other ones better, because it ends up creating this weird scenario where I usually don't want to pick up the other variants of it. There's a very rare cases where I'll actually go for the other variants. And by far, one of the best parts of this map is Klaus. This is an AI companion that you can call in, and he'll go around and kill zombies. And the reason why Klaus is so amazing is because, first of all, he has a great personality to him, but second of all, you can upgrade him multiple times. 2 of the upgrades are required for the main quest, and then the 3rd upgrade is a side quest reward that you don't have to do, but you can do to just make Klaus even better. And he is great. He will revive you, he will kill a bunch of zombies, and like I said, the personality behind him is so great that he is a lot of fun to fight alongside. I also love the subway system on the map, the fact that 2 subway trains can come flying by through the subway section of this map, and if you are there, you will get smashed by it. Of course, this was not the first time we saw this in Zombies. They also did this back in Infinite Warfare Zombies with Shall and Shuffle, but it was cool to see done here again. Another cool feature on this map is the No Man's Land area, where if you step into the spotlight, you will start getting shot by the turret, which is pretty cool. This map also added the Disciples as well as the Tormentors for the first time, and I wouldn't say either boss are particularly that great. They're just decent. They don't really annoy me, nor do they really excite me that much to fight against. The main Easter egg quest is okay. I would say it's one of the better ones in Black Ops Cold War, but it is also really short and simple. I mean, that's most of the quests in that game, of course, but it does end in a pretty damn good boss fight with the Valentina boss fight. It's actually quite an exciting one. It's not that hard. It's definitely pretty easy, but it is really fun and exciting, and I absolutely love the music during this boss fight. Unfortunately, just like most Cold War Zombies maps, it does lack in depth. There really isn't too much to this map that is different than other maps, but I do actually really like that one side quest where you have to collect Mr. Peak's parts and then you get teleported to this dance club where you have to kill a bunch of waves of zombies, but the rewards kind of suck for it. And of course, my biggest issue with this map is just the fact that it's in Black Ops Cold War. I don't like a lot of the mechanics in this game. I don't like the loadout system. I don't like the new point system. I don't like the rarity system. So a lot of things I'm just not a fan of, and I do think holds the map back just a little bit, but I'm not going to let it completely ruin the fun of the map because I do think this is a pretty good map and deserves the credit it gets. In the number 4 spot is going to be Shattered Veil from Black Ops 6 Zombies. This map was so surprising for so many players, including myself, because a lot of us were not expecting much out of this map, especially based on how bad the leaks were for it. The map sounded like it was going to be a very small map similar to the Tomb. It sounded like we were only going to be getting the Wunderwaffe as the wonder weapon, so things were just not going our way whatsoever. But the map turned out to actually be one of the most in-depth maps in Black Ops 6 Zombies. Not nearly as in-depth as I think a map should be, but compared to most modern Zombies maps, it's actually pretty damn good. First of all, as I said before, the map size is pretty big. There is a lot of room to explore, and there's a lot of secret rooms you can unlock during the main quest that make the map even bigger with more areas to train around in or camp in, which is awesome. I've been really wanting more secret rooms in Zombies for a while, and the fact that this map delivered on that is amazing. The Easter egg itself is actually pretty good and fun because there's so many different things you have to do. Now, obviously, in totality, it's not that complicated of an Easter egg, but compared to most modern Zombies maps, it actually does have a lot more to it. There's a lot of parts you have to acquire, there's a couple different puzzles there, and the action steps are actually quite exciting and fun. And it all leads to an incredible boss fight against the Z-Rex, one of the most insane enemies we've ever got to fight in a boss fight, and I absolutely loved every second of it. You can even ride on top of the Z-Rex. How amazing is that? I love the variety in each Easter egg run because it is one of those Easter eggs where you can do most of the steps in different orders, whether it's going for the Reagan Mark II variants themselves or doing the 3 trials associated with each of them. But because you can do them in any order, you can kind of just go around the map and go to the next step that is closest to you, which ends up leading to a lot of interesting strategies to come up with, which I absolutely love. And in terms of the story progression, this is probably the best map in Black Ops 6 because there's actually a lot going on. We actually had Weaver and Richtofen interact with each other, and Richtofen revealed to him what happened to his family, that Weaver was the one who caused that. That was really awesome. I'm also very happy they kind of fixed the boss spam issue on this map. There are significantly less special enemies that spawn in round to round. The only time there's a lot of special enemies that spawn in is when the Elder Disciples spawn in, but they don't spawn in every single round. turn, so there's many rounds where you barely have any special enemies coming at you, which I think makes the map more exciting because when the Elder Disciple does show up, it's a much bigger threat, but it's also not something you're constantly going to have to deal with every single round. And the Elder Disciple in general is just really cool. I'm also glad they finally changed what the special rounds are in this game, and we actually got something different with the toxic zombies. And the toxic zombies, although they're not the most unique special enemy ever, they're still pretty cool. Unfortunately, I do have some pretty big negatives with this map. The first big one being the fact that we really don't have any completely original wonder weapons on this map. We just have the Reagan Mark II variants as well as the Wunderwaffe. And even the variants aren't really that original to them. There's only one that feels slightly original, which is the Reagan Mark II Rotblight, which is the sniper rifle one. The other two come straight out of Alpha Omega and really don't feel unique enough to warrant being the only wonder weapons on this map. But they're still fun to use nonetheless. I just think it would have been nice to see something completely original, especially because the Tomb didn't even have an original wonder weapon at all. I also think these side quests on this map were quite disappointing. I think in general these side quests in the modern era of zombies are quite disappointing. I know a lot of people like them, but I don't really get it. I think most of them don't hit the criteria of what a side quest should be. I think there should be some side quests that are quite challenging and lengthy and actually feel like quests. Most of them are very short and don't really last that long. The rewards usually aren't that great either. Sometimes they're not useful whatsoever, or they're not unique to that side quest. Just getting a loot reward is usually not that exciting because it's not unique to that quest. And this map just kind of lacks in side quest rewards, especially. The only unique one is the Sam Trap, which is definitely cool, don't get me wrong, but that's not nearly as cool as something like the Spider Bait from Zetsubo no Shima or the various upgraded items you can get from Garad Krovi. There's been much better things we've seen in the past, and I really wish this map could have done that. Overall, Shattered Vale is a really solid map and is definitely one of the best maps we've had in quite a long time. In the number 3 spot is going to be Alpha Omega from Black Ops 4 Zombies. Yes, you heard that correct. I am not joking. I am not trolling. Alpha Omega is the 3rd best DLC 3 map in Zombies history in my personal opinion. Let's just get the one huge negative for this map out of the way because I know everyone brings this up whenever this map is talked about, and I agree, this is definitely not a good thing, and that is the fact that the Pack-a-Punch can be turned off multiple times throughout this match in the later rounds. That absolutely sucks. There is no defending that. It is painfully annoying when you're just trying to have fun on this map and the Pack-a-Punch keeps getting turned off and you have to go back and turn it back on. And it's not easy to turn it back on. It's not like it's a very simple process. You have to interact with a valve for a decent amount of time while a bunch of Nova Bomber infected zombies run at you at full speed, and they have a lot of health and they are really frustrating to deal with. So that aspect of this map sucks, and if that didn't exist, this map would be so much better, and I don't think that many people would hate it. And I'm not crazy about some of the Black Ops 4 mechanics in general. I've mentioned that many times before, so I do think it holds the map back a bit as well. But there are so many positives for this map that are definitely worth discussing. First of all, I love the 1950s aesthetic to this map. The colors are also amazing once you turn on the power. Of course, before you turn on the power, it's got a very dull, washed out look. But after turning on the power, the colors become absolutely incredible. It ends up becoming one of the best looking Zombies maps ever. The soundtrack is amazing, whether it's the round change music, the game over music, or the various themes that play during different steps of the main Easter egg. And it all fits the 1950s Americana aspect that this map goes for. The Reagan Mark II variants are actually pretty fun wonder weapons. I know I just mentioned before with Shattered Vale that I don't really enjoy them, but that's because we've already seen them done before on this map, and I think they were honestly done a bit better on this map. Even though they might be a little bit more powerful on Shattered Vale, I just overall think the way they handled them on Alpha Omega was a bit better. First of all, you have the Reagan Mark II X, which is the blue Reagan Mark II, the full auto one that you can also dual wield when you Pack-a-Punch. This one isn't that good, unfortunately. It runs out of ammo really fast and it's pretty weak, but it is still pretty cool that you can dual wield the Reagan Mark II. The Reagan Mark II Z is the purple shotgun one, which we also saw return in Shattered Vale, and this one is pretty good. It's not incredible, especially in the higher rounds, but it is still pretty good, especially in those earlier rounds for just clearing out zombies in front of you. The Reagan Mark II Y is the orange one that shoots out a giant explosive orb that actually kills a lot of zombies, and this one's actually pretty good. I'd say it's one of the most underrated wonder weapons of all time because it's actually pretty good at killing zombies even in the later rounds. Last but not least, there's the Reagan Mark II V, which is the yellow variant, and this one has unlimited ammo and shoots that yellow electricity orb that kills the zombies. Now, this one is probably my favorite of all of them just because of the fact that it has unlimited ammo and because it's actually pretty good. It can be a bit weaker in the later rounds, but because you have unlimited ammo, it still is worth using. But on those earlier rounds, it is very, very solid. So if you're doing the Easter egg, this is definitely the one you want to go with. But one thing I absolutely love about the Reagan Mark II variants on this map is that they're all optional. You don't even have to use any of them for the main quest. So technically each of the quests to get each of these Reagan Mark II variants are all side quests, which just gives the map more content and depth to it beyond just the main quest itself. The main quest isn't even designed around getting the Mark IIs. So when I was talking about Shattered Veil having a pretty fun Easter egg, half of that Easter egg is just getting the Mark IIs, which is totally fine. It's enjoyable on that map, but I like the fact that this map has those quests alongside the main quest itself. There's just so much more to do. Speaking of the main Easter egg, I absolutely love this Easter egg. It's probably one of my favorites of Black Ops 4. A lot of people don't like it because you have to input a lot of codes into Rushmore, but honestly, I have no issue with that whatsoever. There's a lot of steps that are quite fun. I love the lockdown segments towards the end of the Easter egg, and it all leads to a really cool boss fight against Avogadro, which again is a boss fight a lot of people don't like because it's not your traditional boss fight, but I like the fact that it's not your traditional boss fight. It is kind of just a bunch of soul boxes, but you have to deal with Avogadro while he's doing different attacks towards you. I just love the way this Easter egg flows. It's very linear, but when you add in all the different side quests for the Reagan Mark II variants, it makes it very different each match. But of course, like I said before, that's optional, so if you want to just deal with the linear main quest itself, you can do that. I also love Rushmore. He has so much personality behind him, and you can actually input a lot of codes into Rushmore to get unique rewards. You can get a bonfire sale to spawn in, you can get the price of perks to go lower, you can also make a dance party go down in the bunkers. This is all just from inputting specific codes into Rushmore, and it was pretty fun for the community to try to solve what these codes are. Obviously, if you're not looking up a guide, you're not going to know these codes most likely, but it was still fun to have these extra things to learn for the map. There's also the ADAM unit, also known as Adam or the Toy Soldier, and he's just an AI companion that can help you out with killing zombies and reviving you, and of course he's also used for the main quest itself. The storyline on this map is unbelievably good as well, mainly because of the fact that this was the first map that had 8 playable characters on a single map. Now, of course, you can't have 8 people in the map at once, but there is 8 different characters that are canon to this map's experience, and that, of course, is all of the Ultimus characters as well as all of the Primus characters. That was really cool. That was really new. There are so many awesome interactions between different characters that you can have on this map. Absolutely love it. There's also a lot of callbacks, like bringing back Peter McCain, and also adding a lot more context to Avogadro, also known as Pernelius Cornell. All in all, this is by far one of the most underrated zombies maps of all time, and it's really unfortunate that it probably will never get the credit it deserves by the community. In number 2 spot is going to be Buried from Black Ops 2. This is by far one of the coolest and most fun maps of all time for a myriad of reasons. First of all, the Wild Western theme is incredible, especially given the fact that they put a twist on it by putting this Wild Western town underground. That is so unique and different. They could have obviously just done a regular Wild Western town that was above ground and was a normal kind of Wild Western theme, but they wanted to take the extra step of putting it underground, which is just so cool. This map also has one of the most unique mechanics to any map ever, which of course is Arthur, also known as Leroy. This character is so cool because you can actually have him help in a lot of different ways. For example, if you give him booze, he will run forward and destroy specific piles of debris in his path that will unlock either new areas or unlock new paths to other areas that you could unlock through other means, but it just kind of saves you points by not having to buy the doors to that area. And you can also give him candy, which allows him to do many different things. For example, he can attack zombies when you give him candy. He can also hold a crawler. He can craft buildables. He can take the teddy bear out of the mystery box so you can never roll the teddy bear again in that match. Or he can bring the mystery box to any other location. He can also roll the mystery box again if you don't like the weapon that you got from it. He can change power-ups and many other smaller things. This character is what makes Buried such an amazing map. Without Arthur, I don't think this map would be nearly as amazing. Buried also introduced 2 new wonder weapons with the Paralyzer as well as the Reagan Mark II. Now, of course, the Reagan Mark II was also put on the other Black Ops 2 Zombies maps, but it was still really cool to see it added to this map. We haven't really had that many maps before this that introduced 2 new wonder weapons in the same experience. The Paralyzer is a really fun wonder weapon. I mean, you can literally fly with it. The first wonder weapon ever that literally lets you fly. And it's also got unlimited ammo, which is obviously very useful. And then the Reagan Mark II obviously became one of the most iconic wonder weapons just by the fact that it's appeared so many times since then, but it's really great. Buried also introduced Volterade, which was actually the only map that Volterade appeared on until Black Ops 6, which was absolutely crazy. But I actually love the fact that it was the only map in Black Ops 2 that had Volterade because it made this map so much more unique. This perk is really overpowered as well. You get this little green mist cloud that can sometimes spawn after killing zombies, and when you go inside of it, it'll actually hide you from the zombies temporarily. It also makes it so zombies drop little packets of ammo as well as extra points, which is pretty cool, and it lets you see exactly where perk machines are through the walls of the map, which is definitely not that useful if you know where the perk machine locations are, but it is really useful for the mystery box because obviously if the mystery box moves around, then you're going to want to know exactly where that is, which is sometimes hard to see because the mystery box light doesn't really work when most of the map is underground. The layout of this map is absolutely amazing. I love how confusing the tunnels section is to the point where even after 12 years of playing this map, I still don't know my way around those tunnels that well. And then of course there is the witch's house and the hedge maze, which is probably some of the coolest stuff ever in zombies just because you have to go through this long process of going through the witch's house and killing all the witches on the way there, and then through this really difficult to get through hedge maze. It's not that difficult to get through if you have the Paralyzer because you can fly over most of it, but if you don't have the Paralyzer, it is pretty hard to get around, and it's really, really fun. I love the fact that it changes itself every single game, so you can't learn exactly what the layout of the maze is, and this all leads to the Pack-a-Punch machine, which is pretty cool. I like the fact that you have to go through that every single time you just want to pack-a-punch your gun. The Easter egg song on this map, Always Running, is probably the best Easter egg song of all time, or at least one of the best, so every time I load up this map, I have to activate it. The main Easter egg itself is pretty decent. I don't think it's incredible, but I don't think it's bad either. My biggest issue with it is that you can't do it solo unless you're using mods. Obviously, you can bypass most things with mods in the older games, but it does suck that by default, you just can't do this solo. But there are a lot of steps in this Easter egg that I actually like quite a bit, especially the final 2 steps with the bells step as well as the sharpshooter step. I think the bells step is really, really fun to try to coordinate with your friends. And sharpshooter is probably one of the hardest steps in zombies history, especially because you need all 4 players to be on their A game for this step. But if you get it down right, it is so satisfying to beat. Overall, Buried is an amazing casual map that you can just jump in and have fun with friends pretty much all of the time, but because the Easter egg can be a little bit challenging and complex, it does add an extra layer of difficulty to the experience. But the #1 DLC 3 map in Call of Duty Zombies history has to go to Gorod Krovi. Gorod Krovi is phenomenal. This map is an absolute masterpiece. First of all, I have to start off with the main Easter egg quest because it is one of my favorite Easter eggs in Zombies history. It's a very complex and challenging one. Obviously, if you're using the most overpowered gobblegums in the game, it probably won't be that hard, but it is pretty challenging without overpowered gobblegums, which is how I prefer to play most of the time. I especially love the 6 trophy challenges that you have to do. A lot of people don't like the bomb step, but I absolutely love how anxiety inducing it is. The fact that you have to quickly activate 6 switches around the map in the correct order, or else the map explodes and you die. I think that's just so crazy. I've actually never failed this step before, but the fact that it's still so anxiety inducing, even though I've never failed it, is really telling about how the step is set up. The Valkyrie escort is really fun. I enjoy having to escort that Mangler as well, which can be a little finicky sometimes, but I do enjoy the step nonetheless. And then it ends with the Mangler lockdown step. And then of course you go into the boss fight, which is one of the coolest boss fights ever, where you get to fight a dragon and then you get to fight Nikolai in the mech suit afterwards. My only issue with this boss fight is how buggy and glitchy it can be. There's a lot of bugs and glitches that have just never been patched, unfortunately, but the boss fight is still incredible regardless of this. I don't run into the bugs every single time I play, but there has been quite enough times where it has ruined my run. The atmosphere of this map is amazing. It takes place in war-torn Stalingrad during the Battle of Stalingrad, but with dragons flying everywhere. Dragons in Call of Duty Zombies sounds like an insane idea, but the fact that they were able to do it and nail it so well is incredible. I love seeing crazy stuff like this experimented with in Zombies, and I'm glad they went there with this map. I know when the map first came out, a lot of people thought they were really jumping the gun by putting dragons in zombies, but to this day, I love that they did it. One of my favorite aspects of the dragons is the fact that they will periodically come to the map and breathe fire on specific sections, usually the sections that you're hanging out in. It just adds an extra environmental challenge that you have to deal with on the map, kind of similar to the Origins robots where those guys stepped into specific spots around the map and could crush you if you were standing there. But I love how there's different ways for you to bypass the fire. For example, if you pull out the dragon shield and you hold it in front of you, you will take 0 fire damage. Stuff like that is really cool and definitely adds to the skill gap of this map. There is also so many map unique things to Gorod Krovi. First of all, you have the Reagan Mark III Wonder Weapon. Obviously, usually the Wonder Weapons are unique to those maps, but it was still a really cool Wonder Weapon to see. I love how it had 3 attacks to it. You have obviously the right trigger ray gun shot that you can do. You have the left trigger shot as well, which just slows down the zombies. And then if you combine them, it creates this mini portal, kind of similar to the Apothecon Servant, that will suck in the zombies and kill them. It's definitely not the best Wonder Weapon in Black Ops 3. It's not that great in the higher rounds, but it still is a really great, especially in those earlier rounds when you're doing the main Easter egg. The Dragon Shield on this map was also one of the coolest shields we've ever seen in Zombies. Of course, this did return on Revelations, but it was map unique at the time when it was first introduced to this experience, and it's so cool. You can also upgrade it through a side quest, which having side quests to upgrade a shield is always welcome if it's an actual good upgrade, which in this case it is. There's the Dragon Strike Controller, which allows you to literally call in support from a dragon from the sky that will then rain down dragon fire to the zombies down below. Like, just compare that to something like the missile bombardment from Black Ops 6 Zombies that's literally just missiles that come down and just kill the zombies. Like, there is not going to be nearly as cool as something like dragons raining fireballs down onto the zombies. And there's a really fun side quest that allows you to upgrade the Dragon Strike Controller as well, which is, again, really cool. Having side quests that give you unique rewards is always welcome, especially when those rewards are actually quite useful, which in this case, it is pretty useful. It gives you 2 charges instead of 1 at a time, which allows you to use the Dragon Strike Controller twice per round. There's also the Gauntlet of Siegfried Specialist Weapon, which is probably one of my favorite specialist weapons in this game. You literally get a dragon companion that can go around and kill zombies for you, or when it's on top of your arm, you can actually use it as a flamethrower, which is insane. And when it is flying around as a companion, you can use the gauntlet to just punch zombies like crazy. It is so awesome, and I love the quest to actually go for it. Of course, you need to do this for the Easter egg, so it's technically part of the main Easter egg, but it is a very fun quest. You actually have to do all these different challenges that revolve around the egg, and then at the end, you actually get to hatch the egg itself. It is so cool. There was also a lot of new guns added to Gorod Krovi that were exclusive to this map at the time, which is something we don't really see anymore, but I really appreciated it because it just added an extra unique thing to this experience. First of all, there was the PPSH, which obviously got the community very excited when it was first revealed to be coming to this map. There's also the NX Shadowclaw crossbow, which is terrible for killing zombies, but it's great for reviving teammates. There's the L4 Siege launcher, which is a really fun weapon to use, and the FFAR. So a lot of just new guns to add to the arsenal of Black Ops 3, specifically on Gorod Krovi. And as I mentioned before, there are so many great side quests on this map that give you unique rewards, such as the Dragon Shield upgrade and the Dragon Strike Controller upgrade, but there's also a side quest that lets you upgrade the Monkey Bombs, which is something we've seen a couple times before, but it was so awesome to have on this map as well. And then there's also these side quests that allow you to gain extra abilities, for example, the Valkyrie and Mangler helmets, as well as the Dragon Wings. The Valkyrie and Mangler helmets allow you to deal increased damage against the Valkyries and the Manglers, depending on which helmet you have, as well as you take less damage from them. And then the Dragon Wings give you 30% explosive damage resistance as well as 30% fire damage resistance, and lets you teleport to the hatchery without having to call in the dragon and take it there, which is so useful. And on top of all this content, this map also has a melee weapon time trials challenge where if you speedrun through the rounds, you can obtain certain special melee weapons at certain rounds. This system is also on Revelations, but it was introduced on Garad Krovi, and it's a really cool side Easter egg that isn't required whatsoever to enjoy the map, but it's just an extra way to earn some cool melee weapons that can definitely help you gain points in the early rounds. This map also introduced the Manglers as well as the Valkyrie drones, both of which are pretty cool special enemies. I don't absolutely hate them. Obviously nowadays I'm not liking the Manglers much anymore because we've seen them be done so many times on so many maps, but back when Garad Krovi came out, I thought they were pretty cool. There's also the challenge trials in the spawn room, which actually gives you different challenges every single game, and they actually give you some cool rewards. You can get upgraded weapons out of it, or you can get a free perk slot. This just gives you another thing to do on the map that is not required whatsoever, but is still very fun. I just love how this map can be played for so many different reasons. It's a really good casual map. You can definitely hop on this and just kind of mess around and not really care about the Easter egg stuff. But if you want to do the Easter egg stuff, there is so much to it. It's a very complex quest that has a lot of steps. And then of course, there's a lot of different side quests as well. You never really get bored on this map. With that being said, hopefully you guys all enjoyed the video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. What is your favorite and least favorite DLC 3 maps of all time? Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel for more. Peace out, everyone.